10 stupid things about GWM Tank 500 hybrid version specifically that no dealer in their sane mind would ever tell you about. So hear me out, my friends. This is one of those favorite videos of my audience where I am offering you my subjective opinion of what I think is absolutely stupid about certain vehicles, in this case Tank 500. It doesn't make the vehicle bad before you start angrily typing there. Hear me out. This also has combined information from the Russian market that has had these tanks for a lot longer than we have, and as you can see, they also are lucky enough to have other versions of tanks, so they can compare the hybrid performance and what hybrid kind of owners are talking about versus what the petrol owners are talking about. Because here in Australia, again, we are blinded on one eye, or maybe even on both, because we only have hybrid versions. Hence, you objectively cannot kind of refute this fact. So I am bringing this to your attention from the market where they can compare.
This video is sponsored by the old friends of this channel, Ottocast. Ottocast are very well established on the market manufacturers of wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple Carplay AI boxes, which is basically a wireless adapter for your car. If your car is struggling with wireless connectivity to built-in wired Android Auto, wired Apple CarPlay, then Ottocast is one of the major biggest brands that are offering massive discounts to my community to check out. Check out the links in the description below. They have a lot of units. Lately I've reviewed like a couple of them, and this is also your chance to check the Auto Gear Reviews sister channel of mine, of Value Cars Australia, where I go in depth into unboxing, installation and other things about these units. Check them out.
The point number one here, the hybrid system that feels like an afterthought, okay? So if you think that a hybrid in a massive SUV, 7-seater SUV such as Tank 500 would mean kind of much to your fuel savings, because some people fool themselves that by paying a lot more upfront, they're saving the planet, as well as then are going to be saving massively on fuel. Well, I think you need to curb your enthusiasm. This is the first kind of fake news a little bit of a parameter there that you need to take into account. So Tank 500 hybrid, it pairs the 2.0 liter petrol turbo petrol engine with an electric motor as well. So it's an HEV, it's a closed hybrid. But instead of turning this massive vehicle that I kind of like almost, especially the Russian versions, the black ones, yeah, but instead of basically turning it into a very fuel efficient beast of a vehicle, it ultimately just helps with the low-end torque. That is all that that hybrid engine does, as a lot of you pointed out to me in the comments below, and as I have cross-checked now and happy to present to you in this combined compendium of information. So you will have some better performance or low-level torque, but you are not going to save much on fuel. So this is a myth. It's not just even a stupid thing, it's a myth straight up. So in everyday driving, it will still consume kinda almost as much petrol as you would get from a regular ICE engine SUV of that kind of size, okay? So if you're hoping for Prius economy while having a 7-seater on a massive frame, forget about it. That's the first stupid thing. Okay, now point number two, I'm already talking about its size. Yes, it's massive, and it feels massive, okay? So Tank 500, without shadow of a doubt, is a very big SUV. But some big SUVs, they still quite manageable, feel quite manageable in traffic due to acceleration, due to nimbleness, due to other kind of things. But not this one. So the sheer size of this vehicle, as well as just its maneuverability, apparently these two things don't come together quite nicely. We have large vehicles that drive nicer, but this apparently is not. So it feels quite wide, it feels quite long, and turning radius is not particularly friendly. Yep. So trying to squeeze into the parking spaces, yes, you have nice, superior reverse cameras and all that kind of stuff, assisted technology. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking purely about how it feels on the road. Again, according to some people who are owners and who are talking about this in tight Moscow traffic and in other places. So even with 360-degree cameras, acknowledged, they're lovely, it feels like you need a co-pilot just to navigate into a tight parking spot. Off-road, great. In the city, not so great. Alright, point number three is that gear selector is confusingly overcomplicated, and I'm loving that somebody else is bringing up that information to my attention, as well as I can now tell you. It's designed for a wannabe jet fighter pilot, and I know that a lot of tanks, all of them, I guess, Tank 300 as well, they have the similar kind of gear shifter, and some of you love it. You're allowed to love whatever you want. I find it stupid, okay? So for some reason, it's just requires multiple steps to engage properly. Also, you can't just push it into the drive or reverse just like a normal car. You have to press a button, move it in a certain way, and then it actually shifts. I don't know, I think it's overcomplication too. I'm relying here on some external information, but I think it's stupid. So sometimes you will think that you put it into the drive mode, but the system will say nope, it's still in neutral. And a little panic there when you are on a hill or in a rush, and yeah, it's annoying. Point number 4, the startup sound is ridiculously loud. I know that is very subjective, but a lot of people are saying that startup sound is ridiculously loud, okay? Every time you start it up, the system makes this dramatic kind of deep rumble, again, according to a lot of owners. And even when you're just in an underground parking lot, you're not revving up the engine like a muscle car somewhere. It's almost like it wants to remind you, hey, I am kind of tough. But when you are trying to leave quietly in the morning without waking up your neighborhood, or if you parked right outside of your bedroom window, you will know what I mean. You will know what I mean. Point number 5, the third row, I pointed it out before, I will point it out again. It's very, very useless. Technically speaking, Tank 500 is a 7-seater and it has a third row. But it only is for people without legs. I'm sorry. If you don't have legs, then you will fit right in. It's, it's an afterthought. It's not a functional feature. It's a tick box, really. Afterthought is even putting it kindly, okay? So anyone sitting there at the back, is better be under 5 feet tall, or like I said, dramatically a little bit, but you get the picture. What kind of legs would you be able to squeeze between the second row of seats and the third row of seat cushion where it starts? I do not know. It's laughably small. Not to mention, and that is more common here, but it is still stupid, that with the third row of seats not being folded, the boot space is just laughable. There is just nothing there. It's laughably small, okay? So, yeah. Point number 6, infotainment system is apparently rather glitchy, at least according to a lot of reports. Yes, it's a big screen, and that's how Chinese manufacturers, including GWM, often sell us these cars. Because you don't test it properly at the dealership. Even if you take it for a test drive, you don't test it properly. Let's be honest. But, so it sells it on the colors, it sells it on the brightness, on fidelity of these reverse cameras are easily engageable. That's great, that's great. But infotainment apparently is still a glitchy mess. And it looks, again, amazing on paper, but so do a lot of China-made phones, for example. They look, or laptops. Have you ever ordered a laptop from AliExpress? It's a similar situation. But apparently there are plenty of reports of laggy responsiveness, occasional freezing, and weird menu layouts that will just make you scratch your head in terms of where is a certain feature. Yeah, it feels like they stuffed a lot of features, unsurprisingly, that's what they do, okay, without thinking about usability. And the voice assistant is also apparently hilariously bad. Some people, again subjective, but all of it is subjective, I suppose, say that ride is too soft until it is not. So Tank 500 Hybrid specifically is apparently built for comfort, which means that it has super soft suspension. So that sounds alright, yeah, I'm okay with that. But until you hit a bumpy road and realize that it actually starts suddenly bouncing and responding to every bump. You tell me if you're an owner of 500, Tank 500. I'm perfectly aware of the sunken cost fallacy. You will try to defend it, but let's be civil here and tell me, how do you feel? We all can feel differently. I'm just curious if you notice what these people are talking about here, alright? So, small bumps, again, apparently it soaks them up. Okay, larger bumps and dips on the road specifically, the whole SUV wobbles apparently, and this way makes some passengers even reporting being seasick. Number 8. Steering wheel is reported to be vague and slow to respond to your steering maneuvering attempts. For an off-road focused SUV, you think that steering wheel would be very precise and confidence inspiring, but no. Admittedly, I'll raise my hand and say I took Tank 500 for a test drive, but test drive was too short. It was literally 10-15 minutes maybe, and I only went in urban environment, kind of turned one turn, went down the street, turned another turn, roundabout, and that's it. I didn't notice it, but people who are using it day in, day out, that's what they're saying. So steering feels light and vague, making it hard to tell what your front wheels are doing, especially considering that there is also this protruding nose in front. I can only imagine that contributes to that. This slow steering ratio makes sharp turns feel like a workout to some people. Okay, in city traffic it can feel like you're constantly correcting your steering just to stay in a straight line. Check for yourself, everyone is different, but that's what people are saying, and I think it's stupid if it's true. Okay, the rear tailgate is side hinged, and some people say it's inconvenient. I may disagree with this, but because just of sheer amount of feedback received on this level by in comments to a lot of videos on Tank 500 ownership, honest ownership of unsponsored people, and I'm not sponsored by GWM, by the way, in case you're wondering that I'm not. Apparently they say it's inconvenient. If it's parked in a tight spot, you only can realize that you cannot open the trunk. And I get that part. I get that part. So it's much easier to open the tailgate that opens upwards, okay? And sometimes you just don't have the space to open it sideways. So it's much easier, always without shadow of a doubt, to open the tailgate that opens upwards. So that is a stupid thing, but it's also part of design, and sometimes it's a part of this off-road appeal. So you tell me if you think it's stupid or if you think it's us being nitpicky. I've been called worse before. Finally, generally, point number 10 is that it just doesn't feel as premium as it tries to be, especially at the top range of 70,000 plus. Australian dollars, at least in Australia, and the prices in Russia are even more exorbitant equivalents. We won't even go there. So for a vehicle that tries to compete, still, whichever way you think, whether it's a Land Cruiser Killer or not, of course it's not, but it tries to compete with them in the same kind of category of the 4x4, large on a frame, 7-seater vehicles, right? So for that kind of vehicle, Tank 500 Hybrid is, there is some obvious cost cutting in there. You can tell on the finishes, you can tell on the materials. Specifically, they look nice again and shiny on the dealership floor, but when you sit there, when you touch the leather, when you start knocking on those little plastic insets everywhere, and you know, plasticky stalks for the on the steering wheel, the blinkers and other kind of stuff, they do feel a bit cheap. It does feel plasticky. And the leather, like I already said, is definitely not luxury grade, even in the ultra model, the one that is supposed to be worth your money. Yeah, the door panels creak sometimes when you press on them. Of course, it's nothing like we've seen in the early models of Cherry Model 5, but apparently they still creak. I don't know how much that would bother you, but it probably would bother me over time, which is never a great sign of supposedly high-end SUV. Okay. And it's not that Tank 500 suddenly feels bad, but for the price, once again, and the way it's marketed, you would expect a little bit more polish. So to summarize all of these stupid things about Tank 500, I would say that it's a cool SUV with a lot of presence, but it's far from perfect. And I know no one is claiming that it's perfect, but I think there was a lot of hurrah around it, and I was crazy excited when it was just coming to Australia, because I love healthy competition, and I give all brands a go, especially the Chinese brands that get often undeserved bashing, okay? But position of GWM to release Tank 500 only in hybrid, and according to stupid Google summary, AI summary, they think that success of sales in Australia is attributed to the fact that the brand doubled down on the hybrid technology as opposed to do what the customers want. They want other drivetrains, they want choice, okay? And because they're doubling down on this, that's why Google thinks that that's why the sales are going up. And sales are apparently going up, and Tank is mentioned there in the top, but we don't know if it's Tank 500 or Tank 300. And I would bet that it's Tank 300 that's crushing the sales, not 500, by the way. Yeah, and it's interesting also, as a final thing I'm going to say to you, see how Haval Jolian is the best-selling SUV, apparently in Australia as well. Well, in Russia it is too. That Great Wall Motor sold 42 plus, well, almost 43,000 vehicles in Australia in 2024. All vehicles, including commercial vehicles, including the obviously very popular Canon Ute, yeah, the pickup truck. Well, in Russia last year, only Haval Jolian sold almost 10,000 units more than the total number of GWM sales in Australia. That is to give you an idea of how different the markets are, and another kind of nod towards why we look that way often. I give you some information. that otherwise you wouldn't have access to, and they certainly have. Simply saturation of the vehicles on the market is so high that it would be stupid for us not to learn from them and from their mistakes. I hope you've enjoyed this little list. I don't know, I'm not trying to deter you from buying Tank 500, but at that kind of price, 65 to 70 plus thousand dollars, Australian dollars in early 2025, I reckon absolutely you probably could find something better. I honestly think so. I honestly think that you probably could find something better for your family to drive. You tell me, maybe you will try and crush and debunk every single one of these points. I welcome that as long as you're being constructive and as long as you are an actual owner who has actual experience. Plus, obviously, like I said already many times, not to offend anyone, we're all very different. We all take things differently. To someone it's luxurious, to someone it's not. To someone it's creaking, to someone it's not. So talk to me in the comments down below. Let's work like a community here and talk about value cars in Australia, as we always do. Is Tank 500 value? I'm not so sure anymore. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you next week about something else value cars related. Goodbye for now.